You shameless girl. So this is why you were always pretending to be quiet, to trap my son. You think you can enter this family through the back door? You think I'll let you ruin my son's future? Cry all you want, but from today, you're leaving this house, seductress witch.
In the bustling heart of Lagos, where fortunes rise and fall like the tide, lived Amarachi Eze, a girl bathed in the golden glow of privilege. Her parents, billionaires whose names whispered respect and admiration, had built an empire of dreams. Amarachi's world was a tapestry woven with silk and laughter, private jets, and whispered promises of a boundless future. She walked through life with the innocent grace of one who knew only love and security, her eyes holding the warmth of 1,000 suns. Then, the world shattered. It began with a frantic phone call, the voice on the other end trembling like a leaf in a storm, a car crash, a highway accident. Her parents, vibrant and full of life just hours before, were gone. Just like that. Amarachi, barely 18, stood in the opulent living room, the grand chandelier above her seeming to mock her sudden desolation. Her knees buckled, and she fell, a silent scream tearing through her throat, echoing only in the hollow chambers of her heart. Her Uncle Donald and Aunt Loveth, distant relatives who had only ever appeared at lavish family gatherings, descended upon the mansion like vultures. Their faces, once masked with feigned smiles, now twisted into greedy caricatures. Uncle Donald, a stout man with eyes like flint, cleared his throat, his voice devoid of warmth. "Amarachi," he began, his gaze sweeping over the marble floors and gilded frames. "This estate, it's a complex matter. We'll be taking care of things." Aunt Loveth, thin-lipped and sharp-eyed, nodded, her manicured fingers already tracing the contours of an antique vase. Days bled into a week, each one chipping away at Amarachi's fading hope. She watched as strangers, hired by her aunt and uncle, cataloged her parents' possessions, treating her childhood memories as mere inventory. One crisp morning, Aunt Loveth stood over Amarachi, who sat on the edge of her once velvet bed, now stripped bare. "Get up, girl!" Loveth's voice was a whip. "You can't stay here. We're selling the house. You're old enough to fend for yourself." Amarachi looked up, her eyes wide, glistening with unshed tears. "But where will I go?" she whispered, her voice fragile. Donald stepped forward, his shadow engulfing her. "That's your problem. You're not our responsibility. Your parents left nothing but debts, apparently. Now, move." He gestured vaguely towards the door. A cold dread seeped into her bones. She rose slowly, her body heavy with disbelief. She had nothing. No money, no phone, no friends. Her parents hadn't chosen for her, now nowhere to turn. She picked up a small, worn teddy bear, a gift from her mother, and clutched it to her chest. It was all she had left of her past. They watched her walk out, their faces devoid of emotion, the heavy mahogany door slamming shut behind her, severing her last link to a life she no longer recognized. The streets of Lagos were a cruel awakening. The sun, once a gentle caress, now beat down with unforgiving intensity. The air, once scented with fresh flowers from her garden, now reeked of exhaust fumes and stale drains. She walked for hours, her head spinning, the vibrant chaos of the city swirling around her. Her silk dress, now grimy and torn, drew stares, not of admiration, but of pity, curiosity, and sometimes something far more sinister. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, a constant, sharp pain. She quickly learned the harsh currency of survival. A kind word was rare, a shared meal, a miracle. She learned to sleep curled up in the corners of abandoned stalls, under the skeletal frames of uncompleted buildings, her teddy bear, her only comfort. Each night, the sounds of the city, once distant hums, became monstrous growls. Her body ached, her feet blistered, but it was the constant ache in her soul that truly tormented her. The shame, the fear, the isolation, they were heavier than any physical burden. One evening, a familiar face appeared from the shadows. Mr. Adebayo, a family friend, a man who had often dined at her parents' table, approached her with a look of concern. "Amarachi? My dear girl, is that really you?" His voice was gentle, laced with genuine shock. He offered her food, a warm meal, and a place to stay. For the first time in weeks, Amarachi felt a flicker of hope. She clung to his words, desperate for any shred of kindness. He took her to a small, cluttered apartment. She ate ravenously, tears streaming down her face with each bite. Later, as the night deepened, his demeanor shifted. His eyes, once kind, now held a predatory glint. He moved closer, his hand reaching for her, his smile unsettling. "You're a beautiful girl, Amarachi," he murmured, his voice husky. "I can help you, truly. But you have to understand, there's a price." Panic surged through her. This wasn't kindness. It was another form of exploitation. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a trapped bird. She recoiled, her body stiff with terror. "No!" she choked out, scrambling backwards. He lunged, but she was quicker, a burst of adrenaline giving her strength. She darted past him, fumbling for the door, tearing it open, and bolting into the night. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs gave out, not stopping until she found herself back in the familiar, cold embrace of an uncompleted building, its skeletal concrete frame a safer haven than any human touch. She collapsed onto the dusty floor, sobbing, the teddy bear clutched so tightly it felt as if she was trying to absorb its innocence. Days turned into weeks, then months. Amarachi was a ghost, invisible to most, hardened by the merciless rhythm of the streets. Her once soft hands were now calloused, her face thinner, her eyes holding an ancient weariness. But beneath the weariness, a fierce determination burned. She wouldn't break. She couldn't. One morning, she spotted a house help wanted sign tacked to a lamppost. The address was in Ikoyi, a place she used to frequent in another life. The salary was meager, but it promised shelter and food. She knew she wasn't qualified. She never lifted a finger in her life, not truly, but she was desperate. She smoothed down her tattered dress, took a deep breath, and walked towards the address. The house was grand, intimidating. A stern-faced woman, Madame Agnes, opened the door. Her gaze, sharp and assessing, swept over Amarachi's unkempt appearance. "You're applying for the housegirl job?" Madame Agnes asked, her voice skeptical, her arms crossed over her chest. "You don't look like you've ever done a day's work in your life." Amarachi lowered her eyes, her shoulders slumping slightly. "Ma'am, I haven't. Not professionally, but I am a very fast learner. I'm honest, I'm hardworking, and I need this job more than anything. Please, just give me a chance. I'll do whatever it takes." Her voice was soft, but held in earnest plea, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She met Madame Agnes's gaze, her eyes wide and vulnerable, yet surprisingly steady. Madame Agnes narrowed her eyes, studying Amarachi. She saw not just the ragged clothes, but the genuine desperation, the raw humility in the girl's eyes. There was something about her, a quiet dignity that belied her circumstances. After a long moment, Madame Agnes sighed. "All right," she said, her voice gruff. "1 week. If you can't keep up, you're out." Amarachi's heart leaped. "Thank you, ma'am. Oh, thank you." A small, shaky smile touched her lips, the first genuine smile in what felt like forever. The work was grueling. Amarachi scrubbed floors until her back screamed, washed clothes until her hands were raw, and cooked simple meals she'd only ever tasted before. She stumbled, she made mistakes, but she never complained. She watched, she learned, she asked questions, always with a deferential nod and a humble spirit. Madame Agnes, though still stern, occasionally caught glimpses of the girl's quiet determination. She saw Amarachi meticulously folding laundry, humming a forgotten tune, or polishing a table with fierce concentration. It was clear Amarachi was not just working, she was fighting for her very existence. Just as Amarachi began to find a rhythm in her new life, a new presence arrived. Emeka, Madame Agnes's son, returned from London, a whirlwind of charm and sophistication. He was tall, with an easy smile and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he laughed. His presence filled the house with a vibrant energy Amarachi hadn't known since her parents were alive. Their initial interactions were brief, formal. Amarachi would serve him tea, tidy his room, always keeping her head down, acutely aware of the vast social chasm between them. But Emeka, accustomed to the reserved politeness of London, found himself intrigued by the quiet, graceful house girl. He noticed the slight tremble in her hands when she poured his tea, the way her eyes, despite their sadness, seemed to hold an uncommon depth. He noticed the way she moved, with a quiet strength, carrying burdens far too heavy for her slender frame. One evening, he found her in the garden, watering the madam's roses, her face serene in the twilight. He saw a tear slip down her cheek, quickly brushed away. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice soft. Amarachi jumped, startled, her hand flying to her chest. "Oh, sir, yes, I'm fine." She avoided his gaze. He stepped closer. "You don't have to call me sir. My name is Emeka." He smiled, a genuinely warm smile. "You seem burdened." She hesitated, then sighed, a deep, weary sound. "Life has been difficult, Emeka." She looked up, her eyes meeting his, and in that moment something shifted. A connection. He saw her pain, raw and exposed, and she saw his unexpected kindness. They started talking, first cautiously, then with increasing ease. He would find excuses to be in the kitchen while she cooked, or in the living room while she cleaned. They spoke of London, of Lagos, of dreams and disappointments. He shared stories of his studies, and she, cautiously, shared glimpses of her past, omitting the painful details of her destitution. He taught her how to play a few chords on the piano, his fingers gently guiding hers. She would blush, a faint color rising in her cheeks, and a genuine, shy smile would grace her lips. It wasn't long before their stolen conversations deepened into something more profound. Their eyes lingered, their hands brushed, and the air between them crackled with unspoken desires. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves alone in the living room. The soft patter of rain against the window pane provided a rhythm for the pounding of their hearts. Emeka reached out, gently cupping her face. "Amarachi," he whispered, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. I feel something for you." Her breath hitched, her eyes, wide and luminous, met his. "Emeka," she breathed, her voice barely audible. I feel it too." He leaned in and their lips met, a soft, hesitant kiss that bloomed into a passionate embrace. It was a kiss that promised healing, hope, and a future she dared not dream of. But their clandestine romance did not go unnoticed. Madame Agnes, ever vigilant, sensed a shift in the house. She saw the way Emeka's gaze followed Amarachi, the way Amarachi's eyes softened when he entered a room. Her jaw tightened. This was unacceptable. Her son, her pride and joy, was not to be entangled with a mere house girl, however humble. One morning, she found them in the kitchen, Emeka's arm casually draped around Amarachi's shoulders, both laughing softly. Madame Agnes cleared her throat, a sound like thunder. Amarachi pulled away instantly, her face draining of color. Emeka stood straighter, his expression defiant. "Emeka, what is the meaning of this?" Madame Agnes demanded, her voice sharp as glass. "And you, Amarachi, do you forget your place? You are here to work, not to distract my son." Amarachi bowed her head, shame burning her cheeks. Emeka stepped forward. "Mother, stop. This isn't what you think." "Oh, I know exactly what this is." Madame Agnes spat, her eyes blazing. "A cheap affair. You, a girl from the streets, trying to trap my son? You are dismissed, Amarachi. Pack your things and leave." Amarachi's heart shattered. Her breath caught in her throat. The words cut deeper than any hunger pain. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring Madame Agnes's enraged face. "Ma'am, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. Emeka's face was a mask of fury. "Mother, you can't. You don't understand." Madame Agnes stood firm, her stance unyielding. "I understand perfectly." She leaves. Now, Amarachi, heartbroken and trembling, began to gather her meager belongings. The teddy bear, still her only solace, felt heavier than usual. Emeka stood by her, his jaw clenched, his eyes pleading with his mother. "Mother," he said, his voice low and dangerous. If she goes, I go with her. Madame Agnes scoffed. Don't be ridiculous, Emeka. You will do no such thing. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Ngozi, a distant cousin of Madame Agnes, who had been visiting from out of town and happened to know the Eze family. She looked from the tearful Amarachi to the furious Madame Agnes, her brows furrowed in confusion. Agnes, what is all this commotion? Mrs. Ngozi asked, her gaze falling on Amarachi, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. And, good heavens, is that Amarachi? Madame Agnes waved a dismissive hand. Just some house girl causing trouble. She was trying to seduce Emeka, so I'm sending her away. Mrs. Ngozi's eyes widened. She took a step closer to Amarachi, studying her face. Amarachi Eze? Is it truly you, child? The daughter of Chief and Mrs. Eze? Her voice was filled with a mix of shock and disbelief. Amarachi looked up, her eyes meeting Mrs. Ngozi's, a desperate hope blooming in her chest. Yes, ma'am, she whispered. It's me. Mrs. Ngozi turned to Madame Agnes, her face etched with horror. Agnes, what are you saying? This is Amarachi Eze. Her parents were billionaires. They died tragically in a car crash last year. Their greedy relatives, Donald and Loveth, threw her out onto the streets. There were rumors she was living in absolute squalor, suffering terribly. She's not some common street girl trying to seduce your son. She's a survivor, a true princess who lost everything. Madame Agnes's face went white. Her jaw dropped. Her eyes darted from Mrs. Ngozi to Amarachi, who now stood with a newfound dignity, her chin slightly raised, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. The words hung heavy in the air. The truth, raw and devastating, had finally been unveiled. A wave of profound shame washed over Madame Agnes. She had judged this girl so harshly, treated her with such contempt, all while Amarachi, a child of immense wealth and privilege, had endured unimaginable suffering right under her roof. Her initial anger evaporated, replaced by a deep, wrenching pity. The girl who scrubbed her floors and served her meals was not just a house girl. She was a testament to resilience, a phoenix from the ashes of unimaginable tragedy. Madame Agnes walked slowly towards Amarachi, her stern features softening, a hand reaching out tentatively. Amarachi flinched, expecting another blow, but instead, Madame Agnes's touch was gentle. Amarachi, she said, her voice barely a whisper, thick with remorse. My dear child, I am so sorry. I had no idea. Forgive me. Tears welled in Madame Agnes's eyes as well. You have suffered so much, and I added to your pain. She pulled Amarachi into a tight embrace, a motherly hug Amarachi hadn't felt since her own mother's passing. Amarachi, stiff at first, slowly melted into the embrace, sobs racking her body, releasing months of pent-up anguish. Madame Agnes pulled back, her eyes firm with a new resolve. You will not be a house girl anymore, Amarachi. You will go back to school. You will finish your education. You will reclaim your life. She turned to Emeka, her expression softening. And you, my son, you clearly have excellent taste. A small, rare smile touched her lips. Madame Agnes, true to her word, became Amarachi's guardian angel. She enrolled Amarachi in a prestigious university, paying for everything. Amarachi, fueled by a desire not just for herself, but to honor her parents' memory and the kindness shown to her, devoured her studies. The hunger for knowledge was as fierce as the hunger she had once known on the streets. She chose law, driven by an unwavering resolve to fight for justice, to ensure no one else suffered the same injustices she had. Emeka was her steadfast support, her rock. Their love, now open and cherished, blossomed. He visited her at school, studied with her, celebrated her triumphs, and comforted her during her struggles. He was her anchor, reminding her of the goodness in the world. Years passed. Amarachi Eze, once a broken girl on the streets, walked across the graduation stage, a brilliant, confident young woman, now a formidable lawyer. Her eyes, still holding traces of the past, now sparkled with fierce intelligence and an unyielding spirit. Her body language exuded quiet power, every movement deliberate, assured. Her first major case? Reclaiming her parents' estate. Armed with legal documents, meticulous research, and the sharp mind she had honed through years of hardship, she confronted Donald and Loveth. They were stunned, their faces paling as they faced the formidable woman Amarachi had become. Her voice, once a whisper, now resonated with authority, each word a hammer blow of truth. In a landmark case that captivated the nation, Amarachi systematically dismantled their fraudulent claims, exposing their greed and cruelty. The evidence was irrefutable. The judge ruled in her favor, restoring the Eze empire to its rightful heiress. Amarachi stood in her parents' mansion once more, not as a helpless girl cast out, but as its rightful owner. She looked at the grand chandelier, the marble floors, the gilded frames. This time, they didn't mock her. They welcomed her home. Her heart, once shattered, was now mended, filled with gratitude and purpose. She looked at Emeka, who stood beside her, his hand in hers, his eyes full of pride and adoration. He was not her prince in shining armor, but her partner who had seen her at her lowest and loved her still. They would build a future together, a legacy of compassion and strength. Amarachi Eze, the girl who lost everything, had not just survived, she had triumphed. Her story, a testament to the unbreakable spirit of a woman who dared to dream beyond the concrete jungle, would forever inspire those who believed in the power of hope, resilience, and true love.
Turned cold, no mother's arms to shield her, no father's voice remained, only echoes of betrayal.